roughly 1,000 girls every year being kidnapped, found months later after being forced to convert and marry older Muslim men.
The marriage is valid because she's reached puberty. The fact that she was abducted makes no difference. The thing that I always like to say, if you want to understand politically what is going on with any country that is operating under the legal framework of Sharia law, you've got to understand Islam first.
This is the Political Show.
Hey, and welcome to the Political Show right here on Active FM, where radio has never been better. I'm your girl Cynthia, and with me we have
Gavin Ensslin.
Pastor Gavin Ensslin.
And we're praying for Cynthia. She seems to be falling apart there.
Pastor Gavin Ensslin right here on the Political Show, where Christ Politics is
Hot politics.
Hot politics. And this week we are looking into one of the biggest things that we need to be aware of, especially in South Africa. We've seen the rise of this in the UK. We're seeing the rise of it in the States as well. And this is the whole thing that has to do with the Islam religion. Pastor Gav, do you want to give a more brief explanation?
Yeah, the term Islam denotes submission. And, in particular, when you start listening to the discussions that are taking place around the Arabian Gulf, the Arabian Peninsula, the Strait of Hormuz, Iran, looking at Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, all of these guys. And I hear a lot of political commentary. In fact, some of them are talking about the fact that with this war, Donald Trump is actually apparently overcoming the British Empire. Others are saying that it's the Israeli CIA, Mossad, Jeffrey Epstein type complex, and that Israeli money is controlling the US Congress. All of these sorts of arguments are taking place. And then I hear guys that are pro-Trump, and they come in and they say Trump is playing not just 4D chess, the latest term I've heard is he's playing 6D chess. And the problem with all of these different discourses that I'm hearing is that they don't understand the true reality of what Islam is. And I think passionate Christians that would call themselves born again, Christians that, really, really believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, as their Lord and Savior and things like that. I think they would understand Muslims. And the thing that I always like to say, if you want to understand politically what is going on with any country that is operating under the legal framework of Sharia law, you've got to understand Islam first. If you don't understand Islam, you will not have a clue what's going on. And if you look at many of those nations in the Middle East, you have to understand the Islamic mind if you want to understand what is going on. I mean, just as an example, Turkey is part of NATO. Now, what my question is what does Europe have in common with Turkey? So you've got NATO, which is standing against Russia. Now, the reality is Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, and many of the establishment in Russia are Orthodox Christians. And they're part of the Russian Orthodox Church. You've now got NATO, which is standing against an Orthodox Christian nation. And as part of NATO, you've got Turkey, which is an Islamic nation. It's led by President Erdogan that is fully engaged in his Islamic belief. He's fully engaged in his Islamic belief when you listen to him or the speeches of members of his government in the recreation of a caliphate, the re-establishment of the Ottoman Empire. That's what it's all about. And if you don't understand that, and if you don't understand that Qatar has been deeply involved with organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, they've also been involved heavily in funding universities in the West. If we look just recently, Qatar made a serious effort to buy up the soccer club Manchester United. When you start analyzing all of these things, you're not going to understand what's really going on and what those countries are using their oil money for unless you understand Islam. because it's Islam that drives them. And why I'm saying that the only people who are listening to the show that might understand what I'm talking about are believers in Jesus Christ that take the faith seriously, that take the Bible seriously, and believe that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. You cannot change our minds by using temporary things like fuel prices and all sorts of things, justifying things with money arguments and things like that. Because what drives us is a core belief, and whatever we believe needs to line up with the Bible, or we will not accept it. Now, the reality is, if you look at the Quran, the Muslims call it the Holy Quran. If you look at the Hadiths, which are the traditions, and there's some volumes of writings there with the Hadiths about how to live out your Islam, and also they call it the Sirah, which is the recordings of the life of Muhammad, which gives you an example by which to live. Unless you understand that stuff, you will not understand what the Islamic nations are up to. And so that's what we're going to discuss today, because while all of this discussion is happening about 4D chess into oblivion, if you understand what I'm saying, Geeks.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about some very real things that are going on in Islamic countries, because for those of you that are in the West, including those of you here in South Africa or the US or Europe, wherever you might be watching the show, you need to understand that if you really think you're playing 4D chess, you better understand the Quran, you better understand the Hadith, and you better understand the history of Islam and the Islamic mindset today. So that's what we're going to be going through.
Yes, it's going to be hot, as always, right here on The Political Show, where Christ Politics is.
Hot politics.
Hot politics.
This collection marks a pivotal shift for Preach Closet. Moving from heavy graphic prints to a refined minimalist aesthetic. It draws from Ezekiel 37, where the prophet speaks over dry bones, and they rise into a vast army. This collection explores restoration and structure. Just as the bones were brought together with sinew and flesh, forming a body, each garment is built with intention. The cut, the silhouette, the fabric, letting the body of the clothing speak for itself.
So we came across a LinkedIn post from a guy by the name who is basically
You won't call him a friend, eh?
Author.
On LinkedIn.
No, you don't.
Because I don't use LinkedIn that often. So on Facebook,
No,
it's a
it's
friend.
followers, connections.
Well, he's a connection.
Connections.
He's a connection of mine.
And he basically was writing about what's happening to Christian girls in Pakistan, and this is what he
And
writes.
Pakistan operates under Sharia law.
Yes, and I think this is the one thing that a lot of, well, you're gonna get my opinion just now, but I think this is the one thing that people, I feel like, are deliberately overlooking when it comes to Islam, but it's something that we
Could I just say something about
Yeah.
that? You say deliberately overlooking.
Yeah,
If you're not a Muslim, you deliberately overlook this to your peril.
yeah,
Right, you're going to come short.
yes. So he says Pakistan is witnessing a devastating pattern of Christian girls being kidnapped, forcibly converted to Islam, and married to older Muslim men, often with courts validating these unions despite clear evidence the victims are minors. Roughly 1,000 girls are kidnapped every year in Pakistan. And remember, these are just the ones that they know of. If you've been with our show for quite some time, there's an organization called Open Doors that basically puts out records of what's happening in these closed countries and stuff. And they're speaking about roughly 1,000 girls every year being kidnapped, found months later after being forced to convert and marry older Muslim men. Families present
Sorry,
birth
and it's
records.
a forced marriage.
Yeah, it's a forced.
This is not a marriage by choice.
No, families present birth records and baptismal certificates, only to have judges dismiss the evidence. Activists warn the legal loopholes allow abusers to evade accountability, and UN experts have expressed serious concern, noting that adolescent girls between 14 and 18 are particularly targeted, with some even younger, and that those facing poverty and marginalization faced heightened risks of abuse, exploitation, and trauma. And urgent legal reform is needed to protect Pakistan's most vulnerable children. And he gives 4 examples here. We have a young girl by the name of Huma Yunus, and she's 14, and she was abducted in October 2019 from her home in Karachi. Her parents presented school and baptismal records proving her age, but the High Court ruled her marriage valid under Sharia law because she had reached puberty. Then you have, so they say 14.
So this is a girl who was abducted.
Yeah.
So the Sharia court and the place is Sindh in Pakistan. Okay, that's where this High Court ruling was, said under Islamic law, the marriage is valid because she's reached puberty. The fact that she was abducted makes no difference. And the funny thing is she was 14. So she's reached puberty. Okay, let that sink in for all you Jeffrey Epstein freaks.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about a guy like Jeffrey Epstein here who's doing the stuff in a covert fashion. This is a court.
Yeah.
A court says she's reached puberty. Therefore, the court declares the marriage, to be binding. Even though she was abducted, she was kidnapped.
And then, since they say 14 is puberty, we have a young girl by the name of Laiba Masi, who was 10 years old, right? She was abducted by a 40-year-old polygamous man and later transferred to another man, Shukat Shah, who refused to return her to her Christian parents, claiming her conversion to Islam severed their parental rights.
Okay, this is a 10-year-old girl, ladies and gentlemen.
10.
Again, so you're complaining about Jeffrey Epstein. The funny thing is, information like this is readily available, and I don't hear all the so-called libertarian Jeffrey Epsteinites talking about this. And I mean, Jeffrey Epstein's an issue. We've dealt with him on the show. In fact, we probably spoke about Jeffrey Epstein on the show before it was the vogue to speak about him. But what about Laiba? Laiba, what's it, Masi? What about her? 10. She's abducted and forcibly married to another man. But the parents' rights are rescinded because they claim she converted to Islam.
Yeah. And then the third example, or the third young lady that he speaks about is Sidra Bibi, who is 15 years old. She was abducted at gunpoint in Punjab in March 2026. So this is just a couple of months ago. And police recorded her age as 17 rather than 15 and released the suspects after fabricated documents surfaced claiming she had converted and married freely.
All right, so they forged her age, and this is a girl that was abducted at 15 years of age this year.
Yeah.
But they record her age as 17.
And this was done by the police. This wasn't even done by the suspects who had held her by gunpoint. This was done by the police.
Yes.
Yeah. Then we've got lastly Maria Shabazz, who is 13 years old, or was 13 when she was abducted in July 2025. Or she was 12 when she was abducted in July 2025. 13, yes. And forcefully converted and married to a 30-year-old Muslim man. And in March 2026, Pakistan's Federal Constitutional Court ruled she was of mature age and ordered her return to her alleged captor, sparking national protests. Yeah, so that's what the post...
What's key there, it sparks national protests. In other words, this is not some sort of conspiracy theory.
No.
All right? This is reality. There were even protests, in terms of that. And, yet where's all the Epstein nuts? Where's Tucker Carlson?
Mm.
Where's Nick Fuentes? Where's Candace Owens?
Mm-hmm.
All of you crusaders for freedom and for people's rights and for all things, bright and beautiful and wise and wonderful. Where are you guys?
Yeah. So what are your thoughts with this whole situation?
Well, obviously it's something that we've discussed, and if people listen to our Christmas shows every year, we talk about the top countries in terms of persecution, and often the persecution is rated by things like murders, maiming people and stuff like that, burning churches down. But a big part of it is kidnapping girls that are Christians. By the way, the same thing happens in Egypt, all right, where there's a sizable Coptic Christian population there. The exact same thing happens to the Egyptian girls. So wherever Sharia law is in place, these abductions are taking place, and the girl is forcibly converted into Islam.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing I want you to understand, especially for all those of you that are into women's rights and things like that, is the fact that the Sharia law says that, I can't remember how many women it is it 2 or 4 women have to testify, and only then will their testimony be equal to the testimony of one man.
Yeah.
Right? So right there, when your testimony as a woman is devalued because you're a woman, then my question for many in the West is, where is your crusade for women's rights? Because I don't hear any of the so-called feminist crusaders for women's rights who are coming out and talking against this stuff.
Yeah.
And imagine being in a situation, your 12-year-old daughter, she leaves your house to go and buy some sweets at the shop, and the next thing she's abducted and forced to marry a 30 or 40-year-old man. And then you go to the police, you go to the courts, and the courts rule in the abductor's favor. I mean, one of them, obviously, she'd come home.
Yeah.
And she's living with her parents again. Everyone's relieved. And the court orders no, she must go back to the abductor because the court ruled her marriage valid. Forget what the girl wants. The court ruled her marriage valid. So when Donald Trump is negotiating with the rulers in Iran, when people are talking about just let peace be in the Middle East over the situation in Iran, I want you to understand who you're talking about, and I also want you to understand the people we're talking about here. The reason they're abducting these Christian girls is because they're at war with you. They see you as their enemy. If you're living in America, the slogan that is well known in the Middle East is first we'll take care of Saturday. So first we'll take care of Israel and the Jews, and then we'll take care of Sunday, which is the church. And I want you to understand that if you're living in one of those so-called Western democracies, it's not just in the church. All right, they see you as Christian. As far as they're concerned, you're Christian. They talk about you, even if you're gay or transgender, or you drink and you brag about your drinking, or you're a drug addict or whatever. They classify you as a Christian. They blame the church for what you're doing. So their war is against you. I'm very suspicious when I hear that Trump has got allies in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, even United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and all of those places. I don't know if I buy that. I know many of those nations are Sunni nations, and Iran is a Shiite nation. But the reality is that I know in the Muslim mind, a Sunni would far rather fight a Christian or a Jew than a Shia. And unless you understand that entire situation with this backdrop and the fact that under Sharia law, they're entitled to abduct your daughter and forcibly convert her to Islam, and their action will be defended by the courts. That's who you're dealing with.
Yeah. I think on my side, I completely agree with what you've mentioned, because we are living, or social media went crazy when the Epstein files came out. Obviously, it was a lot of things that we knew that was already out there, but the fact that they came out, there were all these podcasters, influencers speaking about the Epstein files. And I mean, there's even a Netflix documentary, I think it's Netflix, in terms of the Epstein files. But now you have this religion that is taking, that is growing in a lot of the Western world. I mean, if you look at the UK, I think we did a show about it in terms of how when they have their prayer in public, you've got that big microphone that what's this? You hear the prayers of the Muslim, but then the Christian apologist or the Christian evangelist gets arrested because they are preaching the word of God. And you've got this religion in places like the UK where they're even starting to teach kids in schools about Islam and how to do the prayers. And I mean, I've seen so many videos of kids that have gone into trouble because they are Christian. They're growing up in Christian families, and they refuse to partake in these activities at school, and they're getting expelled, suspended because they don't want to do this. You see, recently we had it in New York where it was this major thing where everyone celebrated this Muslim mayor.
Mamdani.
Yeah. And they had, was it around Christmas time where, they didn't want to have the Christmas tree up, and they had all these Muslim people protesting against that. And here in South Africa, we've spoken so much on the show in terms of how we're seeing more and more mosques being built. We're seeing all of these Muslim schools that are popping up everywhere, and things like that. And people are like, yes, freedom of religion, in inverted commas, freedom of religion, you allow them, they're a peaceful religion, and things like that. But when you start looking into it and just looking at this with the girls getting, kidnapped or abducted, or because the girl's family is Christian, they have no right or no say over their daughter, and being forcefully married to older men, to men that are probably 3 times their age, 4 times, and then we allow that. And just because it's maybe happening in Pakistan, and maybe you hear about it in Afghanistan or whatever, doesn't mean that it's not going to happen in your nation, in our nation, in the UK.
Well, in the UK, it's happening there.
Yeah.
They call Tommy Robinson a far-right extremist.
Mm.
But why do they call him that? He was actually exposing the grooming gangs in the UK.
Mm.
This has been going on in the UK for well over 10 years. It's been covered up.
Mm.
And so, in countries like the UK and other European nations, and there's also spots where this has started happening in the United States, the Muslims are already there, and the early actions are taking place.
Mm.
And the aim is already there to bring in Sharia law. I mean, it's a stated aim of the Muslims in Texas to bring Sharia law into Texas. So it's already in the West. It's in many parts of Africa, not just Egypt.
So we're seeing all of these things happen, and the question is, how long are you going to keep quiet? Because we're actually having a discussion before the recording to say that there are so many things that we don't know about the Islamic religion, I guess. I mean, I found out, I was recently watching a podcast, and there were so many things that I heard. But one of the things that this woman was speaking about in the podcast, now this is an ex-Muslim, and she does ministry in terms of helping the converted and stuff. But she mentioned with the women, where one of the things that people have always said, they choose to stay, why don't they just leave and whatever. It's not that simple. And then also she brought up the fact that a lot of these women have kids and children, and it's not just that easy for them to step out of the marriage or run away and leave the children, because they know how those children will suffer, and things like that. And that is what we're allowing in our nations. Also, the fact that most of them don't even understand the religion themselves, or understand what they believe in, or what's this in terms of the prayers that they are praying. They don't even understand what they're saying.
Well, the majority of
Majority
Muslims,
of them,
are
yeah.
not Arabic speaking.
Yep. So unless
Worldwide.
exactly, so unless they are Arabic speaking or whatever, then they would understand the Quran. Then they would understand the prayers. But most of them don't. So it's just a tick in the box. It's just something that, and I feel like it's becoming now a trend in the Western world where I'm a Muslim or whatever, but you don't understand that impact behind Islam. And as Christians, I really believe that we have to take a stand against it, and not allow it to grow within our societies. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I mean, there's another story that we spoke about from the American Center for Law and Justice, the ACLJ.
Yes.
And they actually put up a post about a week or two ago, obviously detailing something which we spoke about, I think, over Christmas, that over 7,000 Nigerian Christians were killed in 2025. And also, just recently now, a pastor was executed with dozens of believers being abducted and dragged away. And then armed terrorists stormed a worship service, slaughtering dozens of Christians, even targeting a soccer match that children were watching, in a massacre that went on for hours. Also recently, President Trump's, at his direction, his forces eliminated Abu Bilal al-Muniki, who is second in command of ISIS globally. And the second in command of ISIS globally has been masterminding the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. Now, the challenge here is that ISIS is Sunni, Iran is Shia, and yet there have been reports of Iranian shipments to the African continent of weapons, but aimed at wiping out Christians in Nigeria and also in the north of Mozambique. It says, the statement that ACLJ made was that President Trump declared, under my leadership, our country will not allow radical Islamic terrorism to prosper. It is prospering. It says, but the genocide is not over. Christians are still dying. And then the ACLJ says, in just days, we are filing urgent submissions to the UN exposing religious persecution and demanding justice in Nigeria. But this fight requires your support. But, ladies and gentlemen, the UN will not fight for Christians. All right, I commend what ACLJ are doing, but it's not going to have an effect. And I do want you to understand that anything that you look at in terms of what is going on with these wars involving Muslims, you have to understand the Quran, you have to understand the Hadiths, and you have to understand the life of Muhammad and how he conducted himself. Because Christians' aim is to be like Jesus. There was those Christian bands that sometimes some people still wear, WWJD, what would Jesus do? Well, Muslims would wear a band, WWMD, what would Muhammad do? That's why they grow their beards. They grow their beards and do all of these things because they're trying to live their lives with Muhammad as an example. And so if you want to know who they're trying to emulate, go and study Islamic history and Islamic literature. And go and have a look at that and, go look for yourself. What did Muhammad do? Because a strictly devout Muslim is trying to do what Muhammad did. And what you'll find, these guys that are abducting young girls and marrying them, is the kind of thing Muhammad did. And he also, when they went into war, his warriors were allowed to take women from the conquered peoples. And that was a reward for their battles. And they were allowed to take them into forcible marriage. Muhammad condoned this. Muhammad encouraged this. Muhammad gave this as a motivation for his soldiers to go and fight the Islamic cause. Unless you understand that, you have no clue what's going on in Iran.
That's basically, I think we've been repeating this for quite some time in terms of the fact that we cannot trust them. You can't just accept the Sharia law or the Islamic belief into the schools, into the nations and stuff. And in Isaiah 30 verse 18, it says, for Yahweh is the Lord of justice, faithful to keep his promises. And then it continues, obviously. But I just wanted to say those two lines.
God is faithful to his word.
Mm.
And this I want you to really grab a hold of today. Maybe by some miracle, you might be a person living in a place that suffers under Sharia law. And you know that these abductions take place. Maybe they take place in your community. But our God is an all-consuming fire, the Bible says, and he is a God of justice. And he might give us justice in this life. Sometimes justice happens in this life, but there are many times when justice will happen in eternity. Mm. But what I want to tell you is our God is faithful. He is faithful, and no matter what we go through, he will be faithful. And the Bible declares in the book of Romans that he will work out all things for good for those who love him. If you're looking for justice out of the systems of this world, you will be disappointed. And so I want to encourage you to really look into this stuff, to really look into your life, to look into what you see as being the source of your life, and to look at where you desire justice to come from. And my prayer is that you will discover the beauty and the grace and the awesomeness of the Lord, and that he would take you from strength to strength. I also want to just say, in terms of this, just pray for these Christians to remain faithful in their battle to endure for their entire lives with Jesus Christ. Pray for them to have the strength and to have the love of God in their hearts, to enable them to be a witness to the very people that persecute them. Pray for them. It's what they ask us to do for those of us that are in the free world.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This has been an amazing show right here on Active FM, where radio has never been better. I'm your girl Cynthia, but you can call me Gix. And with me in studio we've had
Gavin Ensslin.
Pastor Gavin Ensslin, right here on The Political Show, where Christ politics is
Hot politics.
Hot politics.
This is The Political Show.